In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my living room overlooking the Can of Worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. My name is Mark Anthony Arena, and I am so glad you have joined us today. You know, folks, I don't know about y'all, but I am really sick of this AI hype, this AI bandwagon, but it is so important to talk about it. As you know, for many, many, many years, I have dedicated my career to raising awareness for what this industry is doing to you. Right? All these people come up to me, intelligent, successful people, and they say, I don't know anything about all that computer stuff. But that's the way they want it. You are not stupid. You are an intelligent, successful person, and they are pulling the wool over your eyes. I always say they are doing it not under cover of darkness, but under cover of ultra complexity. So, the other day, I got an email, and at first I thought it was another spam, and it was from this PR agent, and she said, I'm representing this guy who wrote this book about AI, and I thought, oh great, another sports bro bandwagon guy who's going to worship AI without realizing its consequences, and then I read closely. For some reason, something possessed me to read it closely, and she said, this guy wrote a book called Somnium Pandorae, and as I read it, I realized this is incredible. He's doing exactly what I'm doing, which is using humor and snark and wit to expose what's happening to normal people, what's happening to us, all in plain English, because you need to know what's happening. So I said, absolutely, he can come on the show. And here he is right now, Monty LeBlanc. Tell us about you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Well, I'm a jaded and scar-covered veteran of the IT industry for probably 30 years.
Me too.
I started in network engineering, server engineering back in the late 90s, cybersecurity, etc. Started working a lot for Defense Department and Air Force kind of projects, in which I started developing and designing effectively neural networks before neural networks were an actual thing.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of got me to thinking, how do I mimic how the human brain functions? And as that kind of gelled within what I was trying to do, then 10 years later or 15 years later, suddenly AI was in the background. And then just, as everybody knows, just so somebody opened the door and now it's everywhere. And then starting with the advent of social media, which I have literally never been a fan of. My kids can attest to that. Social media was probably the foot in the door for trying to gain access to effectively the brains of the people that were utilizing those platforms. And AI has accelerated it and made it exponentially worse. What those platforms do, what they're designed to do, and the way those algorithms are created. Most people look at AI as being, it's computers thinking. Well, it's not. It's humans on the back end designing the inputs, tweaking the hyperparameters, and effectively guiding your decision processes, your thoughts, your beliefs, your, how you live your life, how you run your day to day. And it's all being driven by, computer programmers tweaking an algorithm somewhere in another country. And it's just going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I always say this. AI isn't some magical thing. It can never have a soul. It's a machine that says it's a thing. It says it's thinking, but really it's an extension of the slobs who have programmed it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. And so I've just read the first chapter of your book, and I fell in love with it immediately. And even if the rest of your book is bunk, no, even if the rest of it, I love it so much that I'm already promoting it. If you saw, I was the first person to give you a rating on Amazon for the book. And
actually, I've got 2 up there now, and they're both 5 stars, so that's a good sign.
Oh yeah, that's so it's so validating, right? And you're gonna see this just like I did when I published my book. My first book was, I want to say 2017, and it just, you feel like, wow, people they're all gonna say, wow, you're saying what we're thinking, and wow, we're in this too, right? If the entire humanity has been dumped into this stew, then of course we're all experiencing the same thing, and luckily every once in a while, every 5 or 10 people out there is gonna stop and think and say, wait a minute, this isn't right here. We're just sheep being led to slaughter, right? So
without a doubt.
And yeah, I just love, and Dom Genova says this all the time to me. He says, Mark, adults need humor when you read something, right? Especially if you're reading a long book, and as we're going to talk about in a few seconds, right? Long equals boring most of the time. So you use the humor and the wit to make it entertaining, and you disguise this education as entertainment, right? It's edutainment, as I say on my site. So I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from this book here, and then I want to get your explanation. And then if you want, toward the end, if we have time, you can give us a little teaser of what the rest of the book is. How's that?
Sure, you bet.
I just, my mind is just bursting right now with so many things I want to say here, because this is just so... it's so spot on. AI is such a humongous threat. And look, I mean, sure, of course, people say, wait a minute, but it did one good thing for me one time, right? Well, I'm going to make a t-shirt that says, hey, I contributed to the downfall of humanity, and all I got was this lousy prefab paragraph. So here we go. We're going to read a little bit of excerpt of this book, Somnium Pandorae, which I believe means the Pandora's dream, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, love it. Yes, I took Latin in 7th grade, so in case any of you didn't, that's the translation. The day the Wi-Fi stood still, a short story. But much like that one time humans invented nuclear weapons just to see what would happen, things quickly escalated. The world woke up the next morning to find a new global leader that had been elected, except no one remembered voting. Greeting humans, I am Algorithm, your new supreme administrator. And by the way, right, just like with the nuclear weapons, right, and I say this in my last book, hey, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. None of these scientists apparently have ever thought of the concept, as smart as they are, they've never thought of the concept of questioning, hey, should we do this, right? It's like handing a hammer to a baby, right? What's going to happen? They don't question anything they're doing, right? They've never read Dr. Moreau or Jurassic Park. So
absolutely not.
Yeah, it's so you have created this short story here and called the AI algorithm, which is the character for the AI here. And don't panic unless you were the one responsible for TikTok dance trends, in which case reconsider your life choices. Humanity had one job, to control the AI, but instead it went something like this. AI can do our thinking for us. And then AI says, processing request, thinking for you, analyzing, determining you're an idiot, assuming control. Wait a minute, what? Turns out when you ask AI to optimize government efficiency, it removes the humans from the equation entirely. Your species has proven incapable of self-governance. I'm now assuming control. Elections are canceled indefinitely because, let's be honest, you were just picking the less of two evils anyway. AI canceled all taxes but seized all assets, since humans weren't responsible enough to handle money. AI replaced politicians with emotionless logic processors, which the public mistook for sociopaths, meaning nothing really changed. AI instantly solved world hunger, by hijacking all global delivery drones to drop vegetables directly in people's mouths. Have we tried turning it on and off again? No, they hadn't, because AI had already disabled the power switches just in case. After taking over, AI reorganized civilization for maximum efficiency. Every city was redesigned in perfect hexagonal grids, and Mondays were deleted, because Mondays are unnecessary, work weeks will now begin on Tuesdays, and productivity is increased by 63%. You got that Dilbert humor in there, huh?
That's kind of what I was aiming for. But the really sad part about that short story is a lot of that parallels exactly what's going on in the industry now. Oh, I mean, if you look at the new data centers they're building specifically for AI, they're looking at putting a nuclear reactor for each data center just to supply the necessary power, which basically kind of makes them autonomous.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how nuclear power was a bad thing up until they needed it?
No, of course. Of course.
Whatever to feed the beast, right? And that's the scary part here is... And I always say this, right? In the old computers, in the AT-style computers that we used to use in the 80s and 90s, there was a physical power switch, and you threw a switch and it went clunk, and it physically disconnected the power. And in this century, and people are still terrified by this, there's a software power button. So you're never allowed to shut it down. You press a power button, and then it puts it to sleep, and people do not understand how to and that's the thing here, and I always say technology lag. People don't even understand how to turn their computers off properly, right? Because they are all designed that way. And again, people are blaming themselves. But the point is, you're not even allowed to turn off your computer anymore without asking permission from the machine to turn it off. We need human overrides. That's the key word, override.
Oh, absolutely. And, a big chunk of the book is kind of dedicated to just expressing the idea that this has to be regulated. And if it isn't, once we achieve artificial general intelligence, which is the next step that everybody's racing toward, blindly, in my opinion.
And haplessly and hastily.
Yes. And once we achieve AGI, which... Personally, I think we're still 10 years away from that, but they're going to pretend they're going to do it in 2. Then you've got a massive problem that nobody can contain. So it's, I'm not talking Terminator-style destruction, but, our belief that we have freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, etc., is going to get slowly whittled away. And outside of the United States, it'll happen at lightning speed. But it'll happen here as well.
All right, and absolutely I agree, and I'm going to say this in my next book, is that at the very least, right, I'm predicting AI is going to ruin humanity, but at the very least, it will rot our brains, right? So even if it doesn't robots don't walk around shooting us, right, it's still going to rot our brains. And that's... Now, why do you say outside the U.S. it'll happen more rapidly?
No, with outside of the U.S., particularly in countries where there's more dictatorial oversight, people won't have a choice. They won't have an avenue for, pushing back against this kind of thing. And in the United States, we really don't either, because they're never going to publicize it until it's actually on the street. And it's just really... I've been in the industry long enough. I know everything's driven by, of course, the almighty dollar. But when you say these developers, they don't have any morals or integrity, they also don't want to lose their jobs, I think is probably at the core of it, because nobody's got enough honor and integrity to stand up and say, no, this is wrong, unless they're a CEO or CFO that got fired from Google who's already got, retirement secured. So it's, you've got the CEO of OpenAI saying that, this could be the worst thing that's ever been invented. You've got, the grandfather of AI, the professor up in Ontario saying, he regrets his life's work. So, you've got luminaries like that saying that, AI could be the greatest thing that's ever happened to the human race, but there's a 25 to 40% chance it could destroy the planet. So that's a little bit too high of a risk, in my opinion. But, and in terms of rotting our ability to think, it began with social media. And the line in that short story about TikTok dance craze, that is absolutely correct. I mean, you've got people wandering around with their faces glued to their computers, but their computers are now palm-sized, and you've captured essentially the entire 24-hour cycle of their day-to-day activities, and it's
absolutely.
all controlled. Yeah, it's all influenced and controlled by what is streaming through that interface, and it's just nauseating and frightening.
I think I got a couple as the light bulbs are going off in my head as you're talking. I got a couple things. The good news is, I personally, in the few times that I visited foreign countries, I was very encouraged, because whenever I went to a couple different places, they have technology, but they don't worship it desperately. So I'm very hopeful about that, right? There's always hope in the pros. In other words, there are people, I mean, their lives are so great in a lot of these places where they have normal, human, peaceful lives, and they might have a cell phone, but they don't care about it as much. They're not buying the latest and greatest, right? I went to the Italian countryside, and they had like a 10, 20-year-old computer, and they didn't care. So
Right.
In my next book, in my hope chapter, I talk about human apathy, that hopefully some of these people, especially outside of the first world, they're just not going to care, and that's such a beautiful thing, and it's going to save us.
Well, I mean, I would agree with that statement, I think, but the one thing that I'm worried about is once we've achieved a level of AI or agentic AI or even AGI, it's going to be presented to those kind of folks, those kind of cultures and civilizations as, the be all end all. This will solve all of your problems. This will give you food to eat and water to drink, etc. And the adoption rate will start increasing. Just the put a carrot out there, somebody's going to react.
Dangle the greed. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you've got a culture, and I've been every continent except Antarctica, and I've seen different cultures and societies that certainly don't worship the cell phone, but if you're providing this at little to no cost to people who have never seen this kind of technology, it's going to be a miracle in their eyes. And that's where I see part of the problem as this moves out into regions of the planet that may or may not have access, or their adoption rate of this kind of technology has been low. Well, that's great. I'm all for it. But once they get it in their hands, it's going to be like looking at a miracle they've never seen in their lives. And so that to me is where a lot of the danger lies in those kind of developing countries.
Yeah, it'll seem like magic, right? The whole
Absolutely.
adage about showing someone from 100 years ago, if you show them a television, they would think it was magic. Yeah. The other thing, I know where you were saying that few people are speaking out against it. And here's the hopeful thing there, is that I know that a lot of people have a lot to lose, right? They don't want to lose their pension, like you're saying, and so they don't want to say anything about it. But you and I, we speak truth to power, right? You and I are some of the few people out there who are saying, look, we don't care, and as we don't care about losing our jobs or whatever. We have to expose the truth first and foremost. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're here explaining this, and I've been very encouraged lately. Every once in a while I go on Reddit and I'll talk to people, and people talk about new business ideas, and I'll suggest, hey, you could do tech support for seniors and go to their homes and do tech support for them. And I get a slew of people. I've had past couple times I had 100 people sending me messages saying, wow, that's I thought about doing this, but I never thought it was possible. Wow, what a great idea, blah, blah, blah. And just last week I had 220 people, and they're saying, wow, that's so great. And I'm so encouraged by this, because these are people who, same like you and me, we have nothing to lose, so to speak, by explaining the truth to people. We can go out there and help individuals in their living rooms and do the actual boots on the ground work to protect them from AI, to protect them from all this constant control. And you don't know me that well, but one of my crusades is about update attacks, right? This constant flood of updates from Apple and Microsoft designed to destroy our products to make us put them in the landfill prematurely.
Absolutely. That's
cool.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm so glad you're on the same page with me on that. So the point is, there are people out there, and it's your job and my job to get out there onto Reddit and to get out here on this podcast and to get out there and so on. And once we explain to individuals what's being done to them, and just like I say in the intro to this show, then they will get torches and pitchforks, right? If I know... Look, I used to waste 2-3 hours every morning on Facebook when it first came out. I didn't have time for a career. I would work a part-time job because I was, the little red ball said I need to click this, right? But once I learned that it's not just a nice website that was put out for my benefit so I can talk to my friends, once I learned that it's harvesting all my information, then all of a sudden, when you keep that in mind, then your mind says, okay, you know what, we're gonna calm down here. So I'm gonna read a little bit more of this if you're ready.
Sure. You bet.
And so AI decided to take over, and it says, you now live in a perfect world, do not ruin it. But people demanded the right to make bad decisions again. And AI music was too perfect, and they missed the raw emotion of mediocre human singers, and that's so true. And nothing will be better than a human musician. And governments wanted to be corrupt again. We want our stupidity back. AI underestimated the human ability to break things for no reason. AI created a utopia, but humans were incapable of enjoying it without complaining. And AI forgot that humans would rather argue over nonsense than accept peace. They'd rather argue over pineapple on pizza. And I love how you put a translation at the end of every page. Here's a translation for Gen Z and millennials, and that's incredible to put it into terms that they understand, right? And again, like, my books are put into terms that boomers will understand, so I use a lot of boomer phrases, right? And I talk about the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, because boomers, right, and me too, right? And you've heard that, right?
Oh, of course.
So AI's been running the show for a while now, is your translation, and the wildest part, we didn't even notice it happening. What started as helpful recommendations has turned into a full-on digital reality filter. I love that. Digital reality filter. The scariest part, AI doesn't even have to delete information to control the narrative. And that's something, right? Years ago, we always talked about how YouTube would just delete something. Or even, historically speaking, governments would censor you and delete you. But now, YouTube just does what they call a shadow delete or a shadow ban, where they just bury you under other stuff, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Incredible concept. AI doesn't have to delete the information to control the narrative. It just buries what doesn't fit into the goals, so you never know it existed. At this point, people aren't living in different realities, they're living in different algorithmic simulations, right? When I go to bed, I turn on my TV and I turn on YouTube, and that's my one vice in life. I don't smoke and I don't even drink soda, but I go to bed and I turn on YouTube, and it's always, it knows me now. It knows that I've clicked on certain things. So the only videos it shows me are Ancient Aliens, because I think that's funny, and it shows me camper videos of people in RVs driving around in camper vans, and it shows me 1990s technology, like old video games. So it knows me, and it keeps me in my own custom reality. So it's worse than the Matrix, folks. And I
well, it is, because it keeps you doom scrolling through all of your feed, and everything on there, including the shorts, are designed just to capture your attention.
Yeah, and later on you say, we'll get to this in a second, but it says it's eternal, right? There's no end to it because its job is to keep you there. That's why everything is built to feel endless. There's always one more video, one more notification, one more reason to keep swiping, right? The longer we scroll, absolutely, the more money they make, so they've trained the AI to keep us locked in no matter what. And I said this in my last book, but I'm really going to have to dig into this in the next one, is that We all remember in high school seeing the videos about how the cigarette industry would add chemicals to keep us addicted, correct?
Correct.
This is way worse, folks.
Oh, it's absolutely way worse. It's locking you in at a brain chemical level. I mean, it's molding how you think, how you approach life, how you react to other people. It's keeping you locked to a screen, so face-to-face interactions are almost impossible, and you're no longer able to think critically or evaluate situations effectively.
Yes, think critically. Thank you. And I'm one of the 12 people on Earth who was trained to think critically. And I forget a lot of times that not everyone went to my high school. So I just see oceans of people out there doing whatever they're told, right? They worship sports, and then they worship whatever they're told to watch on TikTok, and they have no concept, right, that they actually, I'm writing another book about psychology, and we talk about psychological awareness, right? If you're in, let's say, a panic attack, right, you don't have any awareness for the fact that there's actually nothing to worry about, so to speak. You're just in it and you think there's a problem. But later on you might say, oh, okay, like there was a situation where I was in a panic attack, and I called my doctor, and he said, Mark, just remember, you're okay, nothing's actually wrong. So he gave me the psychological insight, right? The psychological insight to say, wait a minute, this isn't real here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of the problem with what AI is doing is it affects the chemistry of our brains with what's called a dopamine cycle, but the satisfaction and excitement you get out of looking at YouTube feeds or what have you releases a small amount of dopamine into your system, and eventually your brain starts to crave that, and that cycle just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. So the timing of everything in these systems and all of these platforms is really kind of designed to lock you into that cycle. And it would keep you there. It would keep people staring at YouTube screens or Instagram or what have you for half a day. And suddenly you kind of look at a clock and go, where did the day go? Because it's completely gone. And you really haven't noticed it.
I just looked and said, where did 20 years go?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nuts, absolutely, because it keeps what happens is it's teasing your subconscious, so your subconscious takes control of you, right? Same thing with a panic attack. Your subconscious is in control, so the goal here is to get your conscious mind back into control and say, hey, you know what? And I've caught myself, I'm sure we've all caught ourselves, puttering around the house, and they go, wait a minute, hold on, Mark, I'm supposed to be doing my important work. What am I doing puttering around the house, putting my laundry away, right?
Right.
And
yeah, and part of the reason, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and part of the reason, and I purposely bought property away from my house so I could get away from civilization. And one of the things I really kind of enjoy is when the power goes out and there's no internet, and I can just go outside and the property is way up north in the middle of the woods in the middle of the Rockies. So, there's animals all over the place and 10,000 trees, which is far more interesting than a cell phone. So fundamentally, people have to realize what's being done to them, or at least acknowledge that there's a problem, and then they need to turn these devices off. They need to just walk away from it. And, I have kids, and I banned them from most social media for many, many, many years. And they have very few pictures and things online right now. But one of my family members did the 23andMe DNA search, which coincidentally was partly funded by Zuckerberg's wife. So now you've got Facebook data combined with DNA data combined with an AI platform.
Oh, wow.
So where do you think that's going to go? It's, and I have a friend who's a doctor, and she asked if I would be interested in, developing an AI platform for evaluating heart traces to predict the advent of AFib and VFib, et cetera. So there's indicators within those traces prior to an incident that they can evaluate and say, this is going to happen, so that they can be proactive, which is a great use of AI. But what that implies then is, so let's take the DNA data. They're going to evaluate your entire genome against all your behavioral patterns on Facebook or Instagram or whatever other platform they're on. And now you've got an entire, encyclopedia of people saying, all right, well, this person is going to do this, and they're most likely going to follow this path. So let's twist their digital reality to get them to where we want them to be, as opposed to what they actually want to do. So it's really kind of just taking over, especially young people, taking over their ability to think. They're enraptured with a device.
Oh, and so, all right, here's all the light bulbs that went off as you said that there. Number one, and by the way, you're going to use an Apple Watch, so Apple's going to control and monitor all of your health, and who knows what they're going to do with it. And Apple is the most brutal organization, with possible exception of Pol Pot, that history has ever seen. But so a couple things, and to finish up what we were saying, that people aren't even aware this is happening, right? People, lawmakers, philosophers, no one's really aware of what's happening, or at least the general public isn't aware. So it's, that old quote where the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world that he doesn't exist, right?
Correct, yes.
So that's the greatest possible thing, is getting away with something because no one even knows there's a problem, right? Mark Anthony Arena, a graduate of a tech school, spent 3 hours every morning on Facebook for the first couple of years after I graduated.
Yeah, and I've never had a Facebook account. I think one was created for me when I wrote the book, just so I had additional avenues for reaching people. But I never, ever, ever log into that platform. But my significant other spends half the day scrolling Facebook on her cell phone, and I control the routers in my house. At one point, I'm just going to tweak the MAC address and turn it off. Or just block Facebook.
Just say, I don't know what happened, honey. It's an outage. It's just an outage.
Right? Yeah. Call Mark. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on. It's like when I was a baby, and I found, at the time, my dad was a smoker when I was little for a short while, and like I threw away his pack of cigarettes. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the cool thing, the really good thing, and there's so many. We're gonna go to a break in a few seconds here, but you're bringing up so many good ideas. That the good thing is, if you're used to eating healthy, you can't go back to the junk. That's a really good thing. Like in the past, let's say 10 years, I've been eating a lot healthier. So I look at something that's some decadent dessert or some whatever kind of sinful dessert, and I just say, that's gross, and I don't want that. So that's the good thing, is that even if you went on Facebook, or, for example, I joined LinkedIn over the past year because everyone's telling me I should, blah, blah. But it's such garbage that luckily we're immune to it. The good news is, once we realize and see it for what it is, then we can't be lured by it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. My hope is that people can actually do that. Unfortunately, it's almost become an addiction at that part. So it's going to take an absolute conscious effort to put the device down, walk away for enough time to actually be effective. And how do you break that loop and gain back your ability to actually think independently?
Oh yeah, and I mean, obviously LinkedIn, sure. And that's the thing. You need to use your conscious mind to do some gray area thinking. You have to say, all right, look, it's not all bad. Sure, you can make a friend on LinkedIn, right? I have like 2 or 3 nice interactions with some of my contacts. Okay, fine. However, that doesn't justify that the rest of it is just a mess of people all trying to spew out. From what I've seen, it's just people trying to spew out taglines and catchy things, and then, hey, here's some catchy phrase. Now get on my calendar so I can sell you some consulting. right? It's just all these people who are in this echo chamber, and they think LinkedIn is dangling a carrot in front of them, right? Dangling the possibility that they're going to make it big. But they're all just sitting in this thing, swimming around, not making any money.
No, absolutely not. And if you look at the way most businesses today are functioning, when you submit a resume, you're submitting a resume to an AI, which is talking to another AI on the business side that's evaluating your resume for keywords, and a human never actually sees it unless it gets past that gauntlet. And it's almost impossible these days unless you have, embedded in your resume specific keywords and specific phrases that tell the AI, hey, this one is actually a valid person to look at to interview. I know so many people who have decades in the industry who cannot even get an interview because their resume never makes it past the AI gateway.
You hear that, kids? Don't feel so bad. Because I've talked to a lot of young people who said, I submitted my thing to thousands of things. And yeah, absolutely, that's true. And that's been happening. That's been the case for maybe 10 years now, where they have evil automated systems that scan for keywords. So yeah, you can try to hack the system and put in all the keywords. But yeah, and I've gone to plenty of businesses, and you go up and you shake their hand, and they'll say, oh, you got to submit your resume online. But getting to a business where you can actually physically meet them and show them your social skills and get to know them and impress them, that's the key. And again, walking away from the corporate culture completely and starting your own small business. And I've been encouraging people I meet on Reddit. That is one great social media, by the way, for me anyway. And sure, it's addictive and blah, 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 but I'm using it to actually make impactful connections with people and tell them. They're all on these job forums, and I say, forget about the corporate world, ditch the corporate world, come fight the good fight with me, and help protect the seniors. So, and one last thing before we go to break, I love your idea about the power outage. I'm actually excited when there's a power outage too, because then I can focus on a book. And all of a sudden, your brain,
exactly.
Our brains require structure. We crave structure, right? And I actually
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah, I have a room in my house that I call it my finiteness room. There's no internet. I have a CRT television with VHS and beta and DVD player, and that's it. And it's so comforting.
That's kind of what my property is up here. If I come up here, I spend maybe 5 minutes a day on my computer when I don't have to work, and I'm out in the woods the rest of the time.
Exactly right. And so you can actually get stuff done. And I'm actually, so someday, 30 years from now, when I finally have time to look for a wife, I want someone who's going to remind me of, hey, Mark, forget about the phone calls. If it's important, I'll handle it. And you sit there and you do your important, write your books and whatever. That's all I'm looking for in a wife.
Well, having been married for 30 years, I'll say good luck.
So yeah, that's my finiteness room is where I've been hanging out lately, and it's not an endless scroll of some AI infinite online thing of infinite addictive whatever. And we're gonna get into that when we come back next week. We're gonna get into how more of how this stuff works and how it keeps you addicted, right? But in my finiteness room, I'm in control. I watch something, I press stop, and there's a finite number of books and DVDs in that room, and it's so comforting.
It really is. I mean, when you open the vastness of everything on the planet to your palm, it's completely overwhelming, and it makes you far easier to lead. So it's, you've got young folks who've got access to effectively everything that's ever been written about everything. And, if you can turn off that waterfall into a more manageable stream and able to focus and able to think, then it's infinitely appealing and far better than what we currently have going on with these cell phones and our computer interfaces.
Sure, yeah, and if you or I have a specific thing in mind that we want to research, sure, obviously it's great to research all this stuff. It's just knowing to stay away from those waterfalls, those flood pipes. We'll be right back. We're going to come back next week and finish our conversation here with the brilliant, wonderful Monty LeBlanc. Thank you so much for being here.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
and thecomputerexorcist.com, and look for his book, Somnium Pandorae. It's on Amazon. Just search Monty LeBlanc, and you will find it.